Oh, hello, YouTube. I am back again with Season 2, Episode 3 of Interview with the Vampire, and this episode is called No Pain. And oh boy, like, this is one for the book nerds. There are so many Easter eggs in here, and not just like obvious Easter eggs, there's a lot of like deep cuts. So, oh boy, am I excited to like geek out about this with all of you. Let's get into what happens in this episode. The episode starts off in present day. Daniel, he's having some me time. You know, it's sunlight out, the vampires aren't awake, he's gonna go do stuff. So he's out getting some sushi. However, there's this man sitting next to him at the bar, and he starts telling him like, hey, I know what you've been up to, you've been talking to vampires and stuff, but like, I'm from an organization that like tracks all these vampires and supernatural stuff. It's like a whole thing. And he's like saying, hey, you should be careful. Other people have talked to vampires before, and they've either ended up dead and or undead. So watch out, bro. But Daniel's just like, ugh, weirdo, no. He just like assumes he's some type of intelligence officer, and he's just being belligerent, and to the point where the guy's like, ugh, fine, I'm leaving, whatever. But the guy is still on Team David here, so he tells him, hey, I'm gonna send a bunch of info to your, woefully unprotected laptop. And he also happens to name drop Raglan James in this conversation. Now, hoo boy, that is a whole doozy of a story here, but I'm going to try to be very brief. Okay, so Raglan James was the main villain in a buddy comedy vampire Freaky Friday mashup called Tale of the Body Thief, which is book 4 of this series. Raglan is some kind of wizard or something, okay, and he can switch bodies with people, and he comes up to Lestat, it's like, hey, you want to switch bodies? And Lestat doesn't have a sense for danger, so he's like, sure, let's switch, I'll give you my vampire body and I'll take your human one, just for funsies. And I'm pretty sure it surprises nobody that it goes rather poorly. Okay, enough geeking out. Back to the show. Daniel, he leaves the restaurant. He goes back to Louis's house. Louis's still asleep, however, because the sun's still up. But you know what? Armand's just awake and walking around doing stuff. So it gives like Daniel and Armand some alone time, telling the whole history of how the Théâtre des Vampires came into life. So it's 1556, right? The Roman coven takes Armand, they send him to Paris. They're like, hey, you gotta like fix this coven. It's a shitty coven. And they call themselves the Children of Darkness. And they all live underground in crypts, and they act like stereotypical like evil vampires. They're just straight up being Nosferatu all over Paris, which is book accurate pretty much. Armand was full on living his satanic vampire cult leader fantasy for so long there. And there's like a whole lot more to Armand's backstory to tell why he was in this situation in the first place, but that's a story for another time. You know what? I did a whole review on the book, The Vampire Armand, so it's there, but it's a long one. So fast forward about a couple hundred years later, and Armand starts feeling a presence in town. He's like, ooh, what's this about? Because he knows it's another vampire that he hasn't met yet, and also he can tell that he was made by Magnus, which is accurate, because in the book, Magnus was Lestat's maker. But anyway, Armand, he goes to the theater to see this vampire, and Lestat is just on stage, like entertaining the whole audience. Like everybody just loves this guy. He's so charismatic. He's great at acting. He's funny. And it's actually really nice as a book fan to like see Lestat be this like larger than life charming figure again. You know, they don't call him the Brat Prince for nothing. He's very charismatic. So it's nice seeing that. However, Armand does not like seeing this. He kind of immediately hates him because he's like, the cheek, the nerve, the gall, and the gumption. Like, how dare you do this? Like, you're walking around here strutting your stuff in front of all these humans, just flaunting your vampireness. Like, that is not what we do. You know what? I need to like bring you into my satanic cult vampire style of living because it's threatening us that you're not part of it. And Lestat responds by showing him his butt, which is like the perfect Lestat answer because he doesn't want to hang out with those creepy weirdos. He's like, I'm good. Now, this situation in the books is a little bit different because Armand never comes to see Lestat perform. In fact, Lestat wasn't even performing at this time anymore. But he and Lestat in the books, they meet actually at a church of all places. Essentially, Lestat was in a church and the whole coven thought it was blasphemy. They're like, oh my god, how dare you. And at this period of time, Lestat was actually companions with Gabrielle, who was his mother that he made into a vampire at this time. So I'm really kind of bummed the show left out Gabrielle because she is so cool. She's like vampire Indiana Jones. Like, she is so cool and they left her out of the show and I'm upset about it. But maybe they'll bring her back someday later. But anyway, for weeks, the coven doesn't know what to do about Lestat. He's like going around doing his thing. And it's really confusing to a lot of the cult members because they're seeing him act in these ways that they would be punished for, but there's no consequences for Lestat. So they're like, do I really need to be a creepy satanic vampire or can I do like Lestat shit? It's planting some seeds of doubt in the cult members' heads. And Armand does not like this. And this is the part of the episode where I had my nerdy freak out because Lestat has a human lover. And guess what? It's Nikki. I didn't know they were gonna put Nikki in this and I'm so excited they put Nikki in the show. It's a little different time-wise in the show, but essentially Nikki was Lestat's first boyfriend. They met when they were like teenagers together. They're from the same town and they ran away to Paris to go be entertainers. So, you know, Lestat would be an actor and Nikki would play violin. However, they didn't really stay together as boyfriends after Lestat was turned into a vampire because, you know, Lestat was a freaking vampire. He didn't want to hurt Nikki. He stayed away from him. Also, I just have to nerd out one more time because we see Lestat in this episode wearing this big cloak, and this is the wolf killer cloak from the book, which is just chef's kiss for nerds here. Okay, because long story short, when Lestat was a human teenager, he killed a bunch of wolves because they were terrorizing the town and like killing livestock and attacking children. There was a whole thing. So he like killed the wolves and everyone in town was like really happy and they're like, good for you, Lestat. Thank you for saving us from wolves. And they like took the hides from the wolves and they made a big wolf hair cloak. There are so many Easter eggs in this episode. It is bananas. But anyway, Armand, he has had it with Lestat for being so extravagant and not wanting to be, you know, a dirty urchin living in the crypts with him. How dare he? And Lestat is showing up being Mr. Steal Your Girl and he's gonna like fuck up his cult. This is the only thing Armand has. He is very upset with him. So Armand attacks him in the street because he's older and stronger than Lestat. He was at this time period. And he kidnaps Nikki and he tells Lestat, hey, if you want Nikki back, you gotta come get him. And that is book accurate because, like, I'm gonna tell you right now, things don't end well for Nikki. The vampires proceed to torture Nikki, and this happens for a long time in the books, for like several days at least. And of course, Lestat comes for him. He's Nikki, he's his boyfriend. So he shows up and it's like the most Lestat way ever. He's carrying this giant crucifix on him just to freak them all out because he's like, oh, y'all are like weirdly religious. Well, I'm just gonna carry around a crucifix. Suck it, weirdos. And Lestat lays into them. He's like, why are you doing this? This is absurd. There is no reason for you to live in the crypts. Like, this is bizarre. Like, I am living up there with humans, having a good time, and y'all are weirdos. Like, this right here is not a vibe, okay? Ew. However, Lestat is so, you know, larger than life, and he just says a lot of hard truths, and like the cult, like, we're already having questions. So the cult kind of just breaks down after this point, and a lot of vampires go off and they run amok all over Paris, and many of the vampires choose to end themselves instead. At least that's how Armand is telling it. In the book, only a few of the vampires actually escaped the cult because Armand went nuts and he burned all the rest of the members alive, and then he had a mental breakdown. But time goes on, now that the cult is disbanded, Armand, he's in the throes of his mental breakdown, and eventually Lestat comes to find him again. Lestat wants to know more about his powers, because he wants to be more powerful, because he's got like old blood in him, like he should be able to do a lot more cool stuff, but he doesn't have anyone to teach him. And Armand is an older vampire, he has more skills than him. Lestat finds this hot, and they proceed to have like a rather lustful scene between them where they drink each other's blood. And we also learn that Lestat did in fact turn Nikki into a vampire. And here's the deal, Nikki does not take well to being a vampire. Like, after all of the torture he just endured, like, he is very mentally unwell for several reasons outside of torture as well. And Lestat, he's like, okay, I'll make you a vampire. That'll help you feel better, right? And no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. In fact, he feels even worse. And now he's just a mentally ill vampire who plays a mean violin. But Lestat and Armand do start hanging out. And Lestat, he goes back to performing again. You know, he's being the showman. And he comes up with this bright idea. Like, hey, why don't we start a vampire theater? That way we can be as like vampire-y as we want and everyone won't believe it. They'll just think you're acting. It's fake, you know? And then when they're all like lured into this comfortable state of disbelief, we can eat them. You know? It's a smart idea, really. So the remaining vampires in Paris show themselves to Armand, and then they basically go backstage after the show and eat all the actors to take their place and have this now be Théâtre des Vampires. I mean, this is loosely book accurate for the most part. Like Lestat, he does create the Théâtre des Vampires. He does it because basically the few remaining cult members in town literally begged him for a place to go. They're like, what do we do now? You fucked our life up, tell us what to do. Also, he feels a little bit bad for Armand having a mental breakdown. He didn't mean to do that to him. And also, Lestat needs a place for Nikki to go where he's gonna have constant supervision because Nikki is unwell and like Lestat can't pay attention to him all day, every day. And the theater is actually rather successful. People want to go see, you know, a scary vampire play. They're way into it. And Lestat and Armand even start up a little fling with each other. They're having a relationship, much to Nikki's chagrin, because Nikki is still in the theater watching Lestat try to make out with this other dude. On top of that, Lestat is actually just using Armand at this period of time for knowledge to learn more vampire stuff, and then as soon as he learns it, he runs off, abandoning the theater, breaking Armand's heart. However, in the book, like, Armand and Lestat never had any type of romantic relationship because Armand hated his guts at this period in time. And Armand does a lot of evil shit to Lestat that we're not even gonna get into right now. It'll come up later this season, I'm pretty sure. But let's jump forward about 200 years to the more recent past here, to post-war Paris. It's the late 40s. Louis and Claudia are still together. They're trying to come up with a really good story about their maker and how they became vampires. So like that's the official canon and they can hide the fact about they know Lestat at all. Claudia really wants to join the coven. These are the coolest vampires she's ever met and they're nice to her because all the other vampires she met have been really shitty to her. So she's like, yes, this is great. Even though they're hazing her as a new kid. Like she's not allowed to look anybody in the eye and like they put her on body disposal duty. You know, they're just, you know, hazing the new kid a little bit. And while Claudia's off at the theater, Louis and Armand get to spend some quality time together. They have little romantic dates that, you know, also happen to get crashed by the hallucination of Lestat. But regardless of that, Louis is being very charming this episode. And he's just so charismatic and he's like, no, I don't really want to do what other vampires are doing. You know, I want to do my own thing. Which is eerily similar to Lestat, honestly. When Lestat got there, he's like, I see what y'all are doing and I don't want to do that. And we all know what Armand did in order to rein him back in. Like, he kidnapped Nikki. That is just like a foreshadowing moment that I caught in here where I think it's very sinister even though it doesn't appear to be sinister at this point in time. But Armand is still patient with Louis, just listening to him philosophize about the nature of good and evil, and he has these really rigid views of it, and Armand has been around for a while at this point. He's just like, it's really a shades of gray type of conversation, really. And Louis is still frequently hallucinating Lestat as part of their whole relationship. He feels very guilty about a lot of things. And I think Louis tends to forget that Armand can read minds, so he can likely see what Louis is seeing. He knows he's hallucinating Lestat being there. He can see him too through Louis's mind. Finally, Armand is like, oh my God, Louis, are you just gonna tell me the truth already? I am so tired of dancing around this whole topic. So finally, Louis just says it out loud. Lestat made him, he was with him for 30 years, and he killed him in the end because he deserved it. However, he does protect Claudia by saying that she had nothing to do do with it. He's still looking out for her. And he's having this whole difficult conversation of finally just saying the truth, I killed Lestat, all while being mocked by hallucinations of Lestat. And it's too much for Louis. He freaks the F out in this cafe, he flips a table, gets the hell out of there, and he ends up at the cruising park again to have a little hallucination tryst with Lestat. Louis still loves him in a way, and he feels so desperately guilty about what he did with him. However, he's also full of rage about a lot of stuff, and he ends up just beating Lestat's head in. This wasn't actually Lestat, it was just some random dude. He was just picturing Lestat over him, so now we have a dead body on our hands. Now back at the coven, they're getting all a little uneasy about Louis because he's breaking the rules and he doesn't want to become part of the coven. He is threatening to them. The other coven members, low-key, want Louis dead. They're just like, we're tired of this. Get rid of him, Armand, please. This is what the whole coven wants. However, they seem to really like Claudia at the moment, so they initiate her into the coven. They give her her own costume to join the show as one of the actors. However, they want her to play a little girl in the show, which doesn't really thrill Claudia. One of the sources of the most disappointment in her life is the fact that she's still in a child's body, but she has a full adult brain. So good news, she's in the coven. Bad news is they still kind of see her as a child, and she is very upset by this fact. She's like, I'm not a child. I am a 40-something-year-old woman at this point, damn it. So while this whole initiation is happening, Armand takes Louis out on a little walk, presumably to do what needs to be done here. And Louis pretty much knows he's in trouble at this point because he's in this very long, dark tunnel where no one will hear his screams. And also he knows Armand has the fire gift, so he's putting two and two together here. And a little Easter egg here, Armand does not have the fire gift in the books. However, other vampires do have the fire gift in the book, including our beloved Lestat. So Louis knows Armand's probably gonna kill him, and he's just okay with it. He's been through enough, and he just asks him, please take care of Claudia. So even though Armand is right there with a handful of fire, he realizes he can't do it because he's in love with Louis. And he also distinctly knows how Louis feels because he also had his heart broken by Lestat, so he's like, hey, I get it. And that's where they finally find a real deep down connection, but they both had their heart broken, and that just happened to be by the same person. And this actually allows Louis to move on a little bit, and he literally and metaphorically invites Armand into his home and heart because they're going to be officially together now. The interview is kind of wrapping up for the evening, and Louis and Armand, they're still recounting their love story with each other. And Daniel, he sees this weird file show up on his computer, and it's from the Talamasca of all of the research they have done specifically on Armand and Louis and Lestat. And he starts getting these little DMs from someone called RJ. And that's kind of where the episode ends, with Daniel now having a whole lot of information that might, shatter some truths, reveal some lies, point out that the story they're telling him is likely bullshit. I'm assuming he's gonna have a lot of evidence, in particular involving, what happened to Claudia. Oh, this episode is gonna be a shit show at certain points. I am so excited for the drama. But oh man, this was a hell of an episode. I had so much fun with this episode, especially as a book nerd, because there's so many deep cut Easter eggs. So I feel like this was one for the nerds, It wasn't just for the casual viewer. So I had a really good time with it, even though, not a lot of story was actually progressed further. But they did bring in the Talamasca, which was very interesting. Let me know in the comments down below. Did you notice any Easter eggs in this episode that I missed? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.